like to explore the question, where do images like this come from? What do images like this do for us? The kinds of things that you may already have seen in this gallery. Where does this come from? Now this is sponsored by the Southern Arizona Friends of Jung. So of course I'm going to give a Jungian perspective here. And I'm referring to Carl Jung. Most of you all will know, the famous Swiss psychologist, friend and later enemy of Sigmund Freud. So most of the theory I'm going to focus on is Carl Jung's theory. But I want you to know, I want these ideas to be a container that we work with. Something that we can work against, we can move away from, we can take his theories apart if we want, we can reassemble them. I just want his theories, especially relating to art and imagination, that'll be our starting place. And then we'll take it from there. Okay. Oh, I did have one note I wanted to say. You know, I am not going to be, though it will sound like it, I'm not arguing for the authority of Jung's views. I'm really just arguing for the value of his ideas. I want to make that clear. I want to give you all freedom to think and believe any way that you might in regard to these concepts. Where does art come from? And then what should art do for us? Okay. Folks, I would like to start with a tour of the show. I want to show some slides here. And
can you speak a little louder?
Sure. How about this? What's nice about this is that I'm not really speaking any differently at all. I can just put it closer. So, in my new loud voice, let me show you a slide. And hey, what's wonderful is that we are in close proximity to this painting. Man, I don't know if you guys have spent any time with this thing, but this really caught my eye on opening night. I felt like this was so beautiful. I just wanted to be in its presence. The colors of it were so attractive. I just wanted to be around it. Now, opening night, that was practically impossible because there were so many people here. I was, using my elbows and trying to get through to it. Do you all feel that way about those colors? That there's a pleasantness about it? Inviting? Feels good in the nervous system to me. Are you surprised to hear the title is Heartache? Oh my gosh, I hear a yes and I hear a no simultaneously. I'd like to hear both responses. Kelly?
Well, it just looks a lot like how grief is, and heartache is. It's some brightness and it's some darkness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the blue tones in it signify the word blue that we use so often. But there are different shades of blue. So there's some brighter, lighter light in there, and there's a beating heart that's covered up by that.
Oh my goodness. Do you all see the beating hearts? I had never noticed. Thank you. Ceci, you had a response. You said, yeah, I'm surprised.
Yeah, well, there is a special energy here, but it's not to me Reiki to that kind, but I'm just seeing the heart. And I'm seeing like a blooming, something is blooming up there.
This is what I love about art, is how could the same piece elicit those reactions, and how could the same piece be true? It doesn't change, but the way it affects us or the reactions that we have can shift. Now, I do want to talk about Jung's use of abstract art. What interests me the most about this for the purpose of our talk is that it is an abstract piece. It's one of the larger paintings that we have here. And it's visually, I think it's one of the most expansive. I mean, it's as if we were looking out into the universe, maybe into Orion's belt through the Hubble telescope or something like that. It's very expansive. But Jung does tell us that one of the values, I'm not going to say it's the only value, but one of the values of abstract art is that we can have a reassemblage. And I think that's what maybe Ceci was talking about, that there's this reassemblage. But it's coming together through color and mood tones. It's not coming through perspective or images. So in regard to therapeutic value, the abstract art can be very important. And I'll show you some examples of Jung's abstract art. All right, let's,
We can need to be.
okay, here's another piece that's abstract. I don't know if you've seen this one. Man, I really like this. It's probably one of the smallest pieces in the show. I just like being around it because I think it's very different than the way I feel inside. I mean, I might look like this to some people, but I do not feel this way. And I know some people that painting reminds me of. And I like being around them for a short period of time. Any other responses? And so that others can hear, I will actually give you the microphone. Anybody else that we haven't heard from, I'd like to hear any responses that you have to this. Is this Damon?
Yes.
Oh man, hey, I'm glad to see you here. Talk to us.
Well, I'm Native American and I'm Navajo to be exact. And to me, like, this kind of reminds me of like what we see in the ceremonies, and like I've been on Kioti before and like multiple Kioti meetings, and like these type of images and this type of like colors, something like you kind of like feel, and you kind of like with the fire in the middle, you kind of feel connected to something. And I don't know, as soon as I seen this painting, I felt like the same kind of like feeling like arising me, almost like a scary but like hopeful, like in a way, like, you know, like a calm before the storm type of feeling for me. And yeah, for me, it just reminds me of like, it reminded me of like heritage and just like past experiences I had like during a POD meeting.
Beautiful, thank you. And Bonnie?
What came to me was the core among the chaos.
So, you know, it's interesting. I didn't really intend this, but it sort of happened. If we say that this first piece is one of our most expansive, you know, it's out there looking at the universe, this is one of the most microscopic pieces, right? It is almost as if it, not only under a telescope, but like at the subatomic level, you know, the inside of our being is covered. Now, what interests me, I really appreciate your comments about Native American art, because it does have very much of the style that continues in Native American art. But check out the accuracy of Jung's thinking, that here is something that looks like it's being blown apart, but it's being completely held together by the color tones. And that was a part of his belief about the ability for abstract art to help us integrate difficult emotional experiences. We're coming together at the level of color and mood tone. Okay, now I'm going to figure out the direction here in a second, but I'll always go back first and then until I figure this thing out. All right, here's a piece. Okay, look, we've been in outer space. We've been in the inside of the stellar universe, and now we are back on planet Earth. Now, Bettina and I had a conversation about this slide. I've essentially ruined her painting by a color filter that I accidentally used because it was too dark for my slide. But this is a piece that brings us back to the material world, we could say the empirical world, as most of us recognize it through common senses. Please do look at the original, because shadow and darkness is very important to this particular piece. I wanted to showcase this particular painting because it reveals something that you talked a lot about, and it is the way our past is commonly embedded in the present. In fact, he argued that that's an important project in the therapeutic process. We were talking about this earlier. It could be a little fish figure or a mermaid or something like that. It's essentially a dead god. And it's also depicting a fallen estate. And so there's a lot of dead and a lot of new, all mixed and blurred together. I want to explore some themes that relate to that in Jung's artwork. Any comments about this that anybody would like to make? Just responses, things that you see, things that you think of.
So to me, what also stands out in this painting is the lotus. And the lotus happens to be one of my favorite flowers. And amongst the dead, and the Buddhist saying of no mud, no lotus. So the one vibrant color is the lotus emerging from all the shadow and light.
Amita, that's beautiful. Thank you. You know, the trope of that entire painting is the popping of that lotus. That's what I screwed up with my colors. If you look at the original, it pops. Now I'm going to try to say this again. The Buddhist saying is, no mud, no lotus. No mud, no lotus. Perfect. You know, that reminds me of a practice that Sigmund Freud had. He claimed, I mean, not that we're Freudians here, but he claimed that if you have a dream image and you can find a common idiom that captures your dream, you're probably well on your way to understanding the dream. And that's what we have with this painting. There's this idiom, no mud, no lotus. All right, here's the last painting I'm going to show before we take all the fun out of this and start talking about theory and things like that. I have two more. Now look, there could not be a more clear depiction in this show of the way the past is embedded in the present than this particular piece. The photo does not do justice in that there is an element of three-dimensionality to this, that the surrounding color that has the petroglyphs is very thick. And one of the dilemmas of the painting seems to be, is this person being covered up or is this person getting uncovered? We're not exactly sure. I would like to hear any comments about this piece, if you have a reflection or a thought.
Hello, Julie. Oh, the petroglyphs are a theme that runs throughout, and they are in the seeming ancient wall, or whatever it is that she stands behind or emerges from. But also, they're written into her body. You know, they are the ancestors speaking through her life.
Yeah.
So that's what I love about that.
Absolutely, Lauren. It's almost as if she has become that herself. That they are on her and in her being. Absolutely. All right, here's the final piece that we'll show as our tour. This is a magical painting. The photo doesn't do any justice. You can turn around; it's right over your shoulders. I want to use this painting to get into some of Jung's theory about art and its effect on our psychology. He makes a distinction about the empirical way of understanding truth and the symbolical way of understanding truth. We don't usually say that word symbolical anymore, but I kind of like it. I mean, that's the way it was translated in 1912. But if we think of our adherence to truth, if it's going to be empirical or symbolical, if we look at a painting like this, we have to get rid of the empirical way of making sense or finding truth in the world. I mean, look, you're just not going to get very far if you say, oh, yeah, there's the mermaid upstairs in her bedroom. There's the deer peering through the window like he does every morning, wanting to drink from the river there in the upstairs bedroom. No, it doesn't make any sense. We have to enter into a symbolical way of thinking to gain any sort of orientation or meaning from a painting like this. I also want to mention another important idea of Jung's is that the artist, especially creating this kind of art, becomes our community dreamer. That these are images that are given to us that we can enter into in a symbolical way, and we can find our own truth, even though these are not personally related to us. Now, I don't know if that just made sense, what I said. Okay. That wouldn't be the first time in my life. You know what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask somebody if you would be willing to enter into that painting in a symbolical kind of way, or a symbolic way, we would say. And then, could you help us make sense of what it is that's going on?
So what I was taken by is the elements are present. The only element that you don't really see, it's hard to know whether that's a moon or a sun. I kind of thought of an eclipse because we just had one, and so that was something that came to mind in terms of that symbol. But I think it's really interesting that the mermaid and the ocean are inside the house, and the animals are peering into the house and entering in the house. And so it's, to me, it really symbolizes the congruency and the coming together of the outside world and the inside world, which could represent unconscious and consciousness.
Hey, did you guys hear that?
Yeah.
Bonnie makes that easy. Oh, this is easy, man. This is a painting about inside, outside. Beautiful. Beautiful. And this is a painting about the conscious and the unconscious. Would you like to add?
I do. I have a comment to make, because it seems to me that this is more about feeling, and when you try to pin it down to concrete words and images and symbols, you take all the magic out of it. It's a magical piece. But I don't know why you have to pin it down, and if you could put it in words, she didn't need to make a painting.
Okay, well, the first thing I'd like to say is that I don't think we can pin this thing down with words, even if we try, because it will resist. And I think that's what you're getting at. I think that mermaid in the upstairs bedroom and the water, it's going to resist our ability to pin it down. But here's what's wonderful about these images. They're going to continue to make meaning. Even if we do give it the words and it's the wrong words, the painting doesn't care. It's going to continue to emanate all these sort of meanings. I would like to hear somebody else if there's any other symbolical takes. Dan?
Yeah, I see the building as kind of like a tower, and I see the building as kind of like a tower, and in our mythology, who or what is imprisoned in a tower, and what do buildings represent, both the self and the body. I would see the mermaid as a princess in a tower who is a locked up soul, but the water runs through and the animals have access. And I won't go there.
Well, hey, I think you went far enough. That's really nice. Did you guys hear that? That's a really nice way of thinking about it. So, folks, this is what community dreamers, aka artists, can do for us. They channel these images that have multiple meanings that can help us look into it as almost as if it were a mirror reflection of ourselves, and we can find our own narratives, our own meanings. When you were speaking, Dan, it did remind me, the name of this piece is called Domestic Dilemma. And what you just said kind of sounds like a domestic dilemma. Well done. So let me transition, folks, and talk a little bit about, let's see what's on my list, what I'm supposed to be talking about. Okay, I want to talk about the Red Book, because this art show, these images that we've just been working with and entering into and talking about, we're calling the show Dreams, Deities, and Archetypes. And then somewhere on the playbill it says, inspired by the art of Carl Jung's Red Book. So we need to talk a little bit about this Red Book and how this show is inspired by the project of Carl Jung's Red Book. Hey, just for my help, a show of hands, how many of you all have heard of Carl Jung's Red Book? Okay, I would say a good half of this group. I'm going to send Red Book around. I ask that you handle it with care. And then I also ask that you look at it briefly and pass it on. I did a presentation one time about this Red Book, and there were a number of tables and a number of people. I set it down and it never moved from the first person that I gave it to. So I'd like you to take a look, and then Anna, I would like you to start if you would just help yourself. And let's see, can you all see an image of a person like me taking a photo of a book like that? I caught that on my slide, and I thought, you know what? I'm leaving it there because I'm talking about the Red Book. I want you all to know this is with my limitations, okay? These are my opinions, this is my view, that's my shadow there. So you're not going to get, necessarily the most accurate view. But let me tell you something about the Red Book. Essentially, it is a hand-drawn journal that Carl Jung worked on for 27 years. And I would say he worked diligently for 15 years on this piece. And it has all sorts of active imagination experiments that take place in the book. Now, he himself described the Red Book as a story about a man who has lost his soul. And then it's also the story of a man, a modern man, who has recovered the ability to speak with gods, deities, giants, dwarves, talking snakes, etc. That's the experience of the Red Book is very much like the J.R.R. Tolkien novels. This was written as an epic poem. I mean, it's a work of creative writing that has been illustrated. It is more like the Odyssey, if we look at the Greek, a famous Greek epic poem, or it's like the Aeneid from the Romans. And more like the Aeneid in that this is a man who goes into the underworld and then he gets transformed and then he comes back out. Now, the actual title of the book was Liber Novus. The Red Book was just a nickname, that it was a huge red leather-bound book of blank pages. So he just started calling it, that Red Book, that big red thing I'm working on all the time. but really its title was The New Book. And he meant this to be like a New Testament. Like, I have experienced a transformation, and this is my story of how I have come back out into the world and learned how to relate to the gods again. Something that I have lost the ability to do as a modern person. That's what the Red Book is really about. Now, it wasn't created into a facsimile and mass-produced and then made available to the public until 2009. So this is relatively new, even amongst unions, in terms of really having an intimate understanding of how this book works. Let me show you a visual overview, and then I'll see if there's anything else I need to say. This is the first page. Let me get over here myself and see what this is. You can see how it looks like a copied New Testament from the Middle Ages. This looks like the kind of thing a scribe would do. And it's written in calligraphy. It's written in Latin, it's written in German, there's some Greek and some Sanskrit words that are in the book. That image we're going to talk about in more detail. This is another page, again, scribe-like in its creation, with little images. We call those historiated letterings, where the picture is depicting what's being written about. And he gets quite...
Did he scribe this?
He scribed it all himself, yeah. And so there are some illustrations, and then also these beautiful borderings. If you can see that border from where you're sitting, there's a cauldron, there's a rainbow coming out of the cauldron that winds up and around and then meets at a star or a sun. And in that is one of many, many poems that he included in his Red Book. There are many, many full-page paintings that you'll see in the Red Book. Now, before I go any further, questions that you'd like me to address before we move into this particular image. Okay, Mike. Oh, that's a great question. Mike asked, did he finalize these paintings before or after what are called the Black Books? You know, I appreciate you asking this because Jung started everything with words in his journal. And these are referred to as the Black Book notebooks. And so he would write everything down, and then later he created an entire manuscript. It took him a year to get all those journals together, create a manuscript, and then he handed the manuscript to one of his patients. Now that wouldn't be done today. And he asked the patient to type it up. And so then he had a typed manuscript, and then he sent it to friends, and they looked at it and gave him feedback. And then he sat down and said, okay, here, I'm going to do this from the beginning. Page 1. And he started, scribing it into the Red Book. I mean, you guys see how much time that would take? That's a lot of time, 27 years. Laura, you have a question.
Would you say a little more about what inspired Jung to create the Red Book?
Yes, thank you. Practically a nervous breakdown. Freud published a book in 1912 that was the divorce decree between him and Freud. It was essentially a book that said, I no longer believe in what you believe. Okay, this was his book about the archetypes in the collective unconscious. And the ending of this relationship was devastating for Jung. He lost his father figure, he lost his best friend, he believed he lost his future, of having a career and being able to work in the world. And he went into what we would call now, if he were to have a diagnosis, it would be major depressive episode with psychotic features. He started having panic attacks. He started having visions, hallucinations, all sorts of sufferings. This is essentially, I mean, if we were to give it a subtitle today, Laura, it could be the reassembling of a shattered self. The reassembling of a shattered self. Okay, any other questions before we delve deeper?
What shattered their friendship? What was it that they couldn't agree on to keep their friendship together?
Okay, this is another good question, and it's going to come up later, so let's talk about it now. Freud believed that the only kind of libido that people have is sexual libido. Does this sound familiar to you folks? He really believed there are two things in human life, sex and death and nothing else. Everything in the middle is just a ceremony for one of those two things. But Jung said, well, first of all, that's ludicrous. And then second of all, when we have, let's say, dreams, like you see with that mermaid there, that is created by our libido. Our libido is not just sexual. It creates images like this, and it comes to us in dreams and art and poems for the purpose of directing our actions in the world. In other words, these pieces have morality. They're trying to tell us how to act in the world. Now, I think that's a wonderful idea. Now, what's interesting is everything was okay until the book was published. You know, Freud and Jung could disagree, but once the book was published, well, they had to part ways. So that's the short answer. Okay, thank you for those questions. I appreciate it. Let's look at a close-up of that first painting. I know that we have a student here who is studying at Pacifica, okay? A Jung Institute that trains people in the Jungian way. If I were a student, I'm not now, and I'm not going to be, I would take this as my thesis, that first image can be used as a guide that will teach you how to read the entire Red Book. Just that one little simple historiated lettering. It really acts as a key to how the Red Book works. So I want to make sure, oh yeah, the coloring is actually pretty good. Let's just make sure we know what we're looking at here. This is the zodiac that's going across the night sky. These celestial beings out there in the universe. I believe that's the sun and the moon. This is just the first letter of the title of this chapter, which is, I think, the way of things to come. We see a cauldron with a snake coiled and a crown on the snake's head. Here is a little Swiss village. I always think of this as Zurich myself. Jung lived on across Zurich in a little, I guess you'd call it a suburb. And technically this would be a view from his house. He could look and see towards Zurich. I mean, he wouldn't be able to see across the lake because it was so big, but I think of that as Zurich, where Jung was living. Do you see the little boat right here? Mm-hmm. And you see the fish? Well, when you look down below in the deeper depths, do you see an octopus or some kind of weird monster there with yellow eyes? Right there. We have some jellyfish. We have some coral reef. And then, oddly, things are glowing orange down here. It's almost as if it's the core of the earth glowing up in the bottom of that lake or that ocean. Now this is just a fun observation, folks. The first painting we looked at was out into the celestial, right? And then that second abstract was dominated by that color right there. This is unintentional, it just sort of happened. Well, let me tell you what's important about this piece. You learned from Freud that if we say this is the unconscious down there in the water, that there is material that can come up to us here in this world in our conscious being. Information can come up through dreams. Information can come up through visions. But what Jung started experimenting with is that we can also actively dive down into the depths of the unconscious to receive information. One of the ways that we can actively dive down is through the kind of art that you see in this gallery. The way we talked about that mermaid painting. That is the kind of painting that we could be in a gallery up here, but it gives us access to that material in the unconscious. Now, to actively pursue experiences with the unconscious, you have to have some faith, right? That there's something good down there that we would be benefiting from in the first place. Well, Jung had those assumptions. He assumed that there is wisdom there. There is insight. There is intuition. There is an ability to resolve problems that don't seem like they can be resolved rationally. But if we dig down into the depths, we can experience resolution of problems. Freud didn't have that faith. He thought that if you go down into the depths, all you're going to find is an empty hole. What he called the id. It's just a garbled, nonsensical flash of rage and hunger and lust, and there's no redeeming value at all down there. The active imagination exercises in the Red Book started with creative writing exercises. Jung wanted to have a conversation with the spirit of his time. And he noticed that when he had this conversation, the answers were coming from this thing he just called the depths, deep down from there. And so the creative writing exercise was a way of channeling information from down below to up above. Now let me pause. Is this making sense so far? Okay. Hey, here's something wonderful, and this is for the student at Pacifica. Okay, Freud believed that there was nonsense down there in the unconscious. But look, Jung had a wonderful metaphor. He said it's not chaotic. There are organic forms that live down there in the unconscious. It's not chaotic at all. And the organic forms are what he called the archetypes. And the archetypes are those historical stories that we tell over and over and over again. The hero story, coyotes that show up, gods and goddesses and moms and dads and siblings and sibling rivalries, all of those stories that we tell over and over, they are the fixed forms down there. And they live in an environment like the ocean. The ocean is not really chaotic. All of those creatures have their natures and the way they do things. So he called that the collective unconscious. I've never liked that term, to be honest with you. I would rather call it the collective imagination. It is like the imagination of human beings, the collective imagination. That is what artists tap into. And I think, the easiest way to prove it is to say, well, we've already entered into one of these paintings symbolically. We don't know that artist personally, necessarily. We don't even know what she was attempting to do, and yet we are able to relate to it because it is one of those identifiable forms. We intuitively recognize the meaning that comes from these kinds of images. Okay. Now, if you guys are ready, I would like to test some of these ideas by looking at some other local artists. Any questions about what I've said so far? Anything that you would like to clarify? I know that there are some heavy-hitting unions here with us today.
When we talk about collective unconsciousness or collective imagination, so this is universal, this cuts all of us down there, right? And we all, but when we tap into our personal unconscious, it's not the same. So what's the difference between that?
Oh my goodness, I got myself in trouble. I asked for a question, and damn if I didn't get one. Hey, well, I'm going to go back to my little guy, okay? I'm going to go back to this picture. Can you see the picture from your perspective? Okay. All right, here's something fun that happens. Do you see the fish there that's above the letter D? You would say, well, that is the personal unconscious. It's pretty close to the shore. And we all will have a personal unconscious. And this could be experience in our dreams as personal material. You know, if you have a dream of your best friend when you were growing up, or maybe you were at an art gallery one Saturday, and then that night you had a dream about that art gallery that you were in. That's very personal. And I think it belongs to that fish right there. It's very close to the shore. But if we go deeper, and here's what's wonderful, it's below the level of language. It's below the level of that deep. If we go deeper, now we are in the universal. And language isn't going to work. Only symbols and images are going to work from that point on. That would be the short answer. Okay, I'm going to move on here before I get another whopper. Okay, this is a painting by Kathy Keller. And I'm so glad that it's visible from where we are. Let me take my watch off here. Okay, I would like to work with this painting a little bit. And I'd like to first of all just say that I watched the Olympics this year. I don't know if you all did, but man, when I see that painting, I just want to hold up 10, 10, 10, 10. I have a lot of admiration for the craft and skill in that painting. It's really well rendered. It's an unusual color scheme, but the artist has total command of the mood that's in that painting. And it's a very unusual use of color, I believe. And there's also all sorts of technical surprises. If you see that road curving away from the burning city, and then you see that creature, whatever it is, that's curving across the character of the painting, they share the same curves. It's a wonderful technical accuracy that's done. But folks, let's assume that Kathy, who is here with us, by the way, let's assume she is a community dreamer. And so she is offering us one of these images that comes from the unconscious. And then let's assume, of course, I don't need to say this, but we can't use our empirical orientation to truth to make any sense of that painting, probably. And so we're going to have to get into the symbolical way of thinking about truth. Let's talk a little bit about what is happening there and how it might relate to archetypes. And this might require people that already know something about archetypes to make a comment or have a reaction. Feels nice to stop talking for a second.
approaches. Well, we got a woman body, she's naked, and we got a snake and a road. And what is it behind her knees?
Looks like a burning city or something.
Burning city. So for me, almost everything is a symbol, imagery is a symbol, and therefore an archetype. So let's pick the first one that might hit us, which is the snake, and say, what does a snake mean to me? What are my associations with snakes? Some people might say, ooh, I hate snakes. Another person might say, oh, I just think they're so beautiful, I love them. And we might think of things like, oh, the Garden of Eden. There's an important story related to this snake. So all of those, they're all different, all those associations, but they're all, the beauty with archetypes, all of the different meanings are good, and they add.
Helen, thank you. Hey, by the way, Helen runs one of our community dream groups. And the kind of work that she just did is what they do in their dream group. Helen was spot on in regards to the way this works, that we say, first of all, here is a snake. What are your personal reactions to snakes? This would be our personal unconscious. But look, let's go much, much deeper. Now we're talking about snakes in the Garden of Eden. And so now we're connecting it to that collective unconscious or that collective imagination. So now the image is no longer just me and mine. Now the image, it ends up in that collective form that is in the deeper levels. Now, the important thing about this, the reason why Jung connected libido to it, is because he said if it does get down there to the depths, then that means this needs to be acted on in a significant way. So I want to give you a simple example in the interest of time. We could see that as a snake, but we could also see that as an umbilical cord. And let me use my pointer here. Can you guys see my green light? Hey, check this out. What if the city that is burning in the background is the family that we grew up in? What if that city in the background is the town that we come from? And that road is that time in life when it's time to leave. And what if that really stretched back around right up here? And it's our umbilical cord. And that this is a story about leaving home. And look, we all know when you leave childhood, you'll never go back to your childhood. You could come back to a childhood home, a physical home, but you're never going to go back to having the innocence of being a child. And so Jung would say this is an energy about the loss of the Garden of Eden. Just like you had mentioned, the snake. It's the snake. It is an umbilical cord. It is the Garden of Eden. It is telling us that paradise has been lost. We have lost the innocence of childhood. But if we did what this figure does, do you guys see how she's not following the road? She's stepping right up out into the air, and it seems like simultaneously wings are forming. How convenient. It's at the perfect moment. And then look, she has this little bird. Now, if anybody knows Kathy, everybody knows exactly who that little bird is. That's a helper, maybe a guide that already has their wings. And if she steps up, the person in the painting, not Kathy, but if she steps up, she will continue to develop the wings and be able to grow and leave home and become an individuated person. That's the way, theoretically, those archetypes are designed to help us live better lives. to do things, to take actions that need to be taken so that we can fully realize ourselves.
I have a question. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I know this is the tough area of the room here.
So you talked about the Garden of Eden being this universal collective unconsciousness, but that only applies to Western culture that's familiar with the Bible. It's not very universal.
Yeah, this is true. So, you know, the collective, it can be collective for a group of people, like a group of Christians, I suppose, or people that have been exposed to that story, and there are a lot of them. But the idea is that if we go deeper and deeper, it will also relate to other traditions as well. Now let's take the destroyed city. We could say that could be like a Sodom and Gomorrah, but that's also a biblical reference. It's the ancient Hebrews. We could say it's a Babylon, burning and destroying. Well, that's the New Testament now, and it's still fundamentally Christian. But we could go back to a story like the Gilgamesh. And, well, that's from the Middle East, but, you know, Gilgamesh lived in a world where cities were destroyed by gods that were angry and upset. So we could go deeper and deeper, and we will find connections. Now, this is important. If somebody had this dream that lived in Christian culture, we can assume that the language the unconscious is going to use for that person is going to reflect their ability to understand it. And so that's always going to be a function of the unconscious, that it will be compensatory to the dreamer or compensatory to the person creating the painting or experiencing the painting. That's the best I can do on that one. That was a tough question.
Charles, I can't miss that the archetype of the snake goes way back before Christianity. And way back even before Gilgamesh. When you go into the cultures of what Maria Gigudas called the world of the goddess, the snake is an eternal symbol of the renewal of life. It sheds its skin. So when I look at Kathy's painting, for me, what's burning behind it is our old patriarchal way of life. Exactly. And what's rising is the goddess. And there is her ancient snake. And she's coming forward. And I think this is very much a collective image.
Thank you.
Oh man, that's beautiful. I think this room is getting away from me here now. That's really nice. Hey, in the interest of time, I want to show you one other painting. We just met this one. This is Lauren Rain's painting called Sing in the Dark.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to argue that also this is that kind of painting that takes us into the collective unconscious. That we are seeing a character here that belongs to a lot of different traditions. Transcultural, trans-temporal. I don't know what to call her. I mean, we could call her a witch, a shaman, a medicine woman, a sorceress, a prophetess, a seer. But that figure is participating in those archetypes. Now, here's the thing, it's 2 o'clock. And I have another pretty big important segment to talk about. So what I'm going to do is work with this painting a little bit, and then take our break. And then when we will come back and we'll discuss the assignment I give you, and then we'll finish the slideshow. Okay? But let's talk about this image, and this is what I'd like to ask you all as a group. If we say that this belongs to the archetypes, I mean, I named some of them, right? The witch, the sorceress, the seer, the prophetess, the shaman, the medicine woman. If it does belong to the archetypes, then that means this should be giving us direction in regard to how to act and how to behave. So I'm going to ask you, this is a quiz for the group, and I'd like to hear from somebody we have not heard from yet. What kind of action is this painting asking us to do? If we assume that the archetypes are always trying to serve us, they're always trying to help us.
To touch others, physically touch others with something that's bright.
Beautiful. But we're being called to physically touch others with something broader.
To see beyond the seeing.
That sounded very shaman-like to me. Seeing beyond the seeing is what we're being asked to do. I saw a hand up here.
I was going to say, I see her also as a messenger, and even animals or creatures, when you hold up your hand like that, you know, even your dog, he knows what that means. Stop. So it's like saying, stop, look, look in, stop.
Stop, look in, see beyond the seeing, touch others. How about see in a different way? See without your eyes, but see with a different manner of seeing.
Well, the way, first time when I saw this painting, the first night, the hand in Islam, in Muslim religion, that is the Fatima hand. That means the divine person. Fatima was the daughter to Muhammad, the prophet. And that means stop and think and toward divine. Right? But this means to me, because I'm familiar with Muslim religion and symbols, and that symbols right away brought me. And actually in Zoroastrianism, philosophy or religion, we did have divine woman that would be divine and working like a prophet in Zoroastrianism. So that's why that really touched my heart when I saw that painting.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope you all heard that. That's spot on. And it's interesting. So now we've heard somebody with a cultural reference that is very different than Christian, or in this case, anti-Christian, if you want to see this as a witch. But no, this could actually be a symbol from Islam, an active and alive symbol that comes from the collective that can communicate transculturally. Okay, so folks, let me tell you what the assignment is. I realize you might be a little antsy and ready for a break. I certainly am. It's 5 after 2. All right, I would like to give you 15 minutes if you think this is enough time. I would like each of you all to, first of all, go to the restroom, take care of your business, maybe get something to drink. But then I want you to seek and find an image that speaks to you in this gallery. It could be an image that you've already seen, that you've already have a relationship with, or it could be something different. But I want you to just choose one of the images, one of the paintings, one of the sculptures. I have some index cards, and I have some pencils that I found in the storage area. It's very handy. And what I'd like you to do is write the title and name of the piece, just so you can say it if you wanted to talk about it. There is some places to write. On the index card, you could write what it is that appeals to you in this piece, what it is that interests you, what strikes you about it, what repels you against it. It doesn't matter to me. And then on the back of the index card, there'll be a blank spot. And I want to encourage you to think about drawing an image, maybe even just spending a few minutes capturing an element of the piece that you really like, and then just transferring it over as a way to honor it and as a way of getting closer to the image. When we come back, I have a little segment that has to do with the modern person's dilemma of interacting with our text